Hey guys, welcome back to Based MMA. In this video, I am going to be discussing the whole Ian Garry situation. And I can't lie, guys. Originally, I did not want to cover this. Actually, this past week, I spent Thanksgiving with my family. I had work in the week on the weekend. So I saw this whole Ian Garry shit was going down. And I was like, if you've been watching my channel for any time now, you know that I've been shitting on Ian Garry a lot. I mean, I made a video of the worst characters in the UFC. It had Ian Garry in there. And then a couple months ago at UFC 292, I made a video talking about how Ian Garry was not a superstar. I talked about how I didn't like how he attacked Magny and took his comments out of context because Magny had said that he was going to beat him up in the fight, like how he beats his kid. And Ian Garry, being the soy loser that he is, took that comment out of context and started to paint Magny as this terrible father and was telling him to shut up in the press conference, wasn't letting him speak. And Magny, he's not the type of fighter, if he was doing that to maybe like a Colby Covington or a Paddy Pimblett or one of these fighters that talks a lot of trash, then okay, yeah, fair game. But like Magny literally attacks nobody. So just the fact he went at Magny, the fight happened, he dominates Magny, and he was still showboating, flipping him off, and I just hated the way he was behaving. And then I found out that he had his wife's last name, that he took his wife's last name, that she was 40 years old. And, I was like, am I really going to cover this? Because to be totally honest with you, everybody and their mother has been talking about this story. Everybody and their mother, every YouTuber, big or small, all the big dogs have been talking about the whole Ian Garry story. And I didn't want to cover it. But look, some of you guys did ask me like, hey, why are you not talking about the Sean Strickland versus Ian Garry beef? And why are you not really discussing this? Especially, it's ironic, right? Coming from me, somebody who's been shitting on Ian Garry for so long. I kind of didn't want to talk about it. I kind of didn't want to talk about it because I was like, oh, I cover MMA. I'm not a drama channel. I love fighting. That's what I want to talk about, fighters. And yeah, I mean, Ian Garry, obviously when I made those videos about Ian Garry, maybe it was a bit of drama, but it was in the context of fighting. Now, this is a separate thing altogether because this has also a lot to do with the wife of Ian Garry, who's not a fighter. But the story has blown up so much. And, I do have some varying opinions from other channels that maybe you guys might agree on, might disagree on. And it's been a big story, right? So maybe this might be a long video. So sit back, enjoy it. I'm going to be discussing a lot. But I'm going to start with the root because this feels like karma. This just feels like karma because Ian Garry, he attacked Magny. He attacked Magny. Like I said, Magny is not the type of guy to talk trash. He took his statements out of context. Magny said he was going to meet him up like he beats up his kids because, Magny is a veteran. He's a vet in the UFC. Ian Garry is an up-and-comer coming up. You know what I'm saying? He's going to show him that he doesn't belong at the top of the UFC. I think that's what Magny meant by his comments, that he was going to beat him up like he beats up his kids. He was going to give him a whooping. I don't think it was necessarily that Magny is this terrible father that just hits his kids and this abusive father. I don't think, maybe it comes out. Maybe we're all wrong and Magny is this terrible father. But I think anybody with a brain knows that that's not what Magny meant. But Ian Garry, being this loser, he likes to put his morale like he's this guy better than everyone, starts to trash Magny. And even before that, I didn't like Ian Garry, but that just added more fuel to the fire of me disliking Ian Garry. I made a video why he was one of the worst characters. He's vegan, and then some new details came to light a couple weeks ago. Actually, let me see, November 18, Vicente Luque, being based as heck, comes out, makes a post about him giving his life to Jesus Christ, which is incredibly based, and, pretty much becoming baptized and making this post. And I think Ian Garry deleted his comment because I don't see it anymore, but I have a picture of it because I posted. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the Dylan Dennis as well because it's getting a lot worse. I think I posted it on my Twitter. Okay, so Vicente Luque, I hope you guys can see it. I have Vicente Luque posts on his Instagram. He says, I have believed in him, and seeing how much he has blessed me in all my life, in the good moments and in the hard ones, he always got me through and strengthened me. Now I walk in the way as he guides me to his kingdom. Thank you, Jesus. Base post, right? Just Vicente Luque, just posting something he's going through his personal life, giving his life to Jesus Christ, which is absolutely based. Ian Garry being the loser. And let me try to make my screen a little bit smaller so you guys could see it. Ian Garry post, December 16th, he'll be standing in front of you. He'll be standing in front of you, tall, blonde, and all powerful. And I really do believe this was the final straw in Ian Garry's luck, because after he made this comment, a week later, all this drama started happening. So if I were Ian Garry, I would start praying. I will start praying and asking for forgiveness, because ever since he made that comment against Vicente Luque, his life's been going downhill. Now, after that, this channel called Red Pill MMA, I had never watched them before. I watched MMA Guru's video first, and then I went back to watch Red Pill MMA because he said that a lot of that information he got from Red Pill MMA. And they pretty much talked about how, Ian Garry's wife, ex-husband, lives with them, is the nutritionist of Ian Garry. And I think I already knew that. I already knew that the ex-husband, I don't know how the MMA community found out about that. But we knew that Ian Garry's wife's ex-husband was a nutritionist for Ian Garry, which is already weird. She's 40 years old. He's 26 years old. And the one thing I will say, and then we find out about the book, which I'll get to the book. The one thing I will say, none of these things are bad individually. The reason why I think this story has blown up as much as it has, excuse my hair, all right? It's pretty bad today. But anyway, the reason why I believe this story has blown up as much as it has is because of the culmination of things. She's 40 years old, 26. Then you find out that she wrote a book about how to be a wag. Whether that's true or not. I mean, she wrote the book. She did an audio. That's real. And then, the nutritionist is her ex-husband. The ex-husband lives with them. Ian Garry changed his last name to her last name. Like, all these things together looks really bad. Looks really bad. And then, I think Ian Garry is filming a documentary. He posted something on his Instagram. Let me see if I could pull it up. This is her Instagram. Let me see. Okay. He puts this video that just a very private conversation between the two, and Ian Garry posted on his Instagram, and then all those things added together really added fuel to this fire, and people started to be like, man, like, she is a wag, because she wrote that book. Ian Garry's talking about how, like, hey, if you're a wag, we need to have a serious conversation, because yada yada. They're having these private conversations. He posts it on the internet, and all these things are coming out. It's just like the worst combination, the worst luck that could have happened to Ian Garry, in my opinion. So all these things are really bad. And like I said, I think individually, like, for example, the book came out in 2010. She didn't know Ian Garry at the time. Ian Garry was just a little young Chad. So I'm sure that book has nothing to do with Ian Garry. And then before Ian Garry, she married another guy. And I believe the other guy her ex-husband is not a professional athlete. So I think the book is a little bit overstated. I don't think, like, when people talk, a lot of YouTubers, and credit to them, I could see why you would run with that story the most, but I don't think the book, the How to Be a Wag book, is the biggest red flag to me, at least personally. Like, that wasn't the thing that, oh, she's definitely a wag. Like, it's the other things. It's the fact that, I mean, to me, the weirdest thing about the story, I mean, I'm young, I'm not married, so maybe, I lack a bit of perspective. But the weirdest thing about this story for me, in my opinion, is the fact that they live with the ex-husband. That's very weird. Strange as hell. That he's a nutritionist, and that he lives with the ex-husband, and that he changed his last name to his wife's last name. Like, to me, those are the weirdest parts of the story, not necessarily the book, because, you know, she came out and said that actually the book, she did it like 10 years ago. Really has nothing to do with it. And, you know, I think another thing, so that all that story comes out, Ian Garry doesn't necessarily respond to all these allegations or all these things that are coming out about him, but his wife does. His wife comes out, you know, especially because a lot of this whole scandal is based around the wife and the fact that she's a wag, the fact that she's a gold digger, that she's manipulating Ian Garry because he's young. You know, they haven't been married for that long. She's clearly controlling his life and stuff like that. That's really what people are running with, which I think is probably true, man. It's probably true because there's just way too many coincidences. Like, if it was just a book and the ex-husband wasn't living with them and he wasn't the nutritionist and Ian Garry didn't choose his last name, then I'd be like, okay, yeah, people are like making this shit up. Like, they're just exaggerating. The book isn't really a big deal. But, you know, when you think about everything together in culmination, you can't deny that there's something weird going on. You know, there's something weird going on. And like I said, I didn't necessarily want to cover it because, you know, I felt like, one, I was busy. Two, I felt like, okay, I'm just milking it. I'm not really a drama channel. I'm not one of these big channels, but, you know, I'll give my opinion on it. And then, you know, I think Friday, Sean Strickland posted a video just talking about the whole Ian Garry situation and why he thought it was weird and that he had met Layla in one of the events and that he had seen the way she looked and stuff like that, and he had a bad vibe from her. That's pretty much what Sean Strickland said, and that Ian Garry needs to run from that relationship, that he's being manipulated. And, you know, Sean Strickland being base, he's gonna say what he thinks. And Ian Garry came out and said that, you know, he better stop talking because he's going to sue him. And that's where, you know, I kind of have a bit of a problem with, because you can't sue someone for giving an opinion about something that's public. You know what I'm saying? If somebody wants to make a video, I mean, I'm a small channel, right? It's different. No, I'm still very small in the grand scheme of things. Like, I'm really like nobody in this space yet. But if someone were to make a video about, you know, how terrible my takes are or how terrible my YouTube channel is, they have every right to do so. I can't be like, I'm going to sue you for defamation. I'm not. It's the internet. That's the pros and cons. That's the risk of being on the internet. If I'm on the internet, you know, the pros, you know, you get to talk to a variety of people. You get to talk to people about what you love. You could do it from home. You know, you can grow an audience. You grow your own platform, your own business. The risk of that is that somebody can obviously attack your character, and, you know, you could, yeah, pretty much people can misconstrue your character. People can misconstrue what you say on the internet. So that's just part of being on the internet. And if you can't handle that, then you shouldn't be on the internet, and let alone what Ian Garry did, which post a very private conversation between him and his wife on his Instagram. Like, why would you do that? You know what I'm saying? Why would you do that? And like I said, I just think that Ian Garry, if he actually sues for defamation, that would be a very weak move, and I don't think he would recover. And really, the strategy for them, I can't believe I'm trying to help Ian Garry here, but the strategy should have been to not talk about it, not address it at all. And his wife shouldn't have come out and posted, you know, responses on her story on Instagram either. She should have stayed quiet, because the more she talks, the more the story trends, the more YouTubers are going to cover it. And they should have just stayed quiet. Stay quiet. Don't talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Don't talk about it. But, you know, the MMA community is pretty big now. And I feel like they kind of like put them in a corner, especially the wife, that she felt like she needed to respond because she was constantly getting commented, oh, you're a wag, you're manipulating Ian Garry, and you're all this and stuff, which, you know, like I said, I definitely think there's something weird going on. I mean, she's 4 years old, he's 26. I mean, the age alone doesn't necessarily mean that there's something going on, but it's definitely strange, added with the fact that the ex-husband lives with them and is the nutritionist. That makes it even weirder. But still, I don't think Ian Garry or his wife have taken the right approach in dealing with this whole scandal. In my opinion, they should have stayed quiet. The wife shouldn't have come out and said anything. And then she comes out and responds. She responds to all these allegations, and the first thing she says is like, she tries to say that it's sexist. That's the reason why she's getting attacked, and she only brings up the fact that people are attacking her because she's 40 years old and Ian Garry's 26. When yeah, people are saying that, but that's not really, the majority of the problem here. The big problem is that, she didn't address the ex-husband, which to me was the weirdest part about it, in my opinion. The fact that the ex-husband lives with them, that's very weird. Like she didn't address that. She addresses the book where, when I watched the video about the book, like to me the book wasn't necessarily the biggest thing because like I personally I didn't go and listen to the book, so I don't know what's in the book about how to be a wag. It could be satire. You know what I'm saying? I don't know the context of the book. I just know there's a book of how to be a wag. And then it doesn't look good with the fact that she's 40 years old, married to a 26-year-old fighter. In that book, she talks about how potentially she wants to be with a young athlete and all that stuff. But she came out and said that she published that book in 2010, that it was satire, it was due to her job, whatever. I'm not really going to talk about that. But let's assume that she's saying the truth. Let's assume she's saying the truth. It's still, to me, doesn't really address any of the weirder issues. And the reality is that, we could talk about it. At the end of the day, it's none of our business. Like, that's really the truth. It's none of our business. It's the MMA community. We're being nosy. There was no UFC last weekend. And this situation doesn't even get better. So I thought, maybe today, this week, things start to cool off. Obviously, we have UFC Austin this week. Let me see. We have UFC Austin this weekend. But no, Dylan Dennis himself, this guy is already known for exposing people's fiancés for being hoes. The whole Logan Paul situation, if you're not aware. And Dylan Dennis posts this morning a conversation that her and Layla, Ian Garry's wife, had 5 years ago in 2018, where, you could see her posting this. And then he says, "Where are you from?" And she says, "England, but half Brazilian. How are you today?" And he says, "Very cool, doing great. Where do you live?" Something definitely happened. And this is not a good look. It's not a good look either. Now, what I will say is that this conversation is clearly before she met Ian Garry. But at this point, she's not going to beat the allegations that she's a hoe and that she's clearly looking to date athletes, young athletes, because this isn't just people might be like, oh, this is just a normal conversation. What's wrong with this? It doesn't mean she wants to be with him. But like, come on. She posts that. He says, "Where are you from?" She says, "England, but half Brazilian." She could have just stopped the conversation there. But she kept going and asked, "How are you today?" You know what I'm saying? She's clearly interested. In my opinion, that's what I read. But I think she's clearly interested. There's clearly something going on there. Something happened in 2018, but it's not like she cheated on Ian Garry because she wasn't with Ian Garry, but like, it's just not a good look. Do you see what I'm saying here? Like, maybe this individually is not a big deal, but when you put it as a group all together, all these little things, it adds up and it just looks really bad. It looks really bad. And at this point, if I were Layla and Ian Garry, I would not comment about this. And to be quite honest with you guys, even though, like I said, I'm not a big fan of Ian Garry. I don't like the guy. I think he's a very talented fighter. I think he's still going to be Vicente Luque. This might affect him a little bit, but I still think he has the skills to be Vicente Luque. I think Vicente Luque is on the decline. I didn't really like his performance against RDA. I still think Ian Garry has a lot of potential in the welterweight division, but, this is going to be a big hit. Big hit to his reputation. He's going to constantly live with people commenting on his Instagram that he's dating a wag, that he's dating a 40-year-old woman, that he's a sore, that he's all that. He's going to have to deal with that. Now, I thought, things might start to cool off because at the grand scheme of things, Ian Garry is not a Logan Paul. He's not like known worldwide. Us, the MMA community, we know who Ian Garry is. We know who his wife is. But in the grand scheme of things, of the internet, not a lot of people know who Ian Garry is. But it gets worse, guys, because this morning, like I said, I just read the conversation. Dylan Dennis comes out and posts this conversation. and things could not get worse because now this story is about to become mainstream. You know what I'm saying? It's not just gonna stick. This whole scandal isn't just gonna be, in the MMA community now. Now this has expanded even more. So I think Ian Garry and his wife need to shut up. They need to shut up. Don't say you're gonna sue. Shut up. Let the story roll over. Yeah, you're gonna get a lot of flack, but the best thing to do now is to stay quiet, in my opinion, because it doesn't matter how many times you try to respond. If, other people that maybe Layla has texted, other celebrities, they might come out and post conversations. Who knows who this girl has been with? She probably is a hoe, but I mean, she was single, so you can't really, give her too much crap for that. It's just really messy. It's really messy. And, the MMA community did have a sort of interesting approach, right? Because the approach wasn't, oh, look at Ian Garry, he's such a loser, blah, blah, blah. It was more of like, okay, we need to save Ian Garry. We actually need to save this guy, and we need to make sure he leaves his relationship. But at the same time, it's like the internet. Like we have no place in this fight. It's just the internet, and people have the right to be opinionated, to say what they want to say, whether it be right or wrong. And people are gonna go with the narratives. And that, I'm not trying to defend Ian Garry or his wife, because like I said, I still think the situation as a whole, all these things individually, together, individually, you might be able to, okay, the book, was 10 years ago. Okay, this. But when you start to piece it all together and you're getting all these new details about his current relationship and the fact that the ex-husband lives with them, there's just no way you can beat those allegations, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? But that's just kind of my take on the whole situation. I'm curious to see what happens. I hope this is the end of their conversation, because if there's more between Layla and Dylan Dennis, this is going to get really bad. This might be one of the worst scandals in MMA. Like, this is going to get really bad for Ian Garry. And like I said, I think, he already had a bad track record. He was already doing bad things. And then when he came out like a week ago and made that comment comparing himself to Jesus Christ, I think that was the final straw. And that's where all this started to happen. This was karma. And I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I don't want to kick a guy when he's down, but Ian Garry kind of deserves this. He honestly does. And like I said, this doesn't change the fact that I still think he's a very talented fighter. The fact that I still think he's going to whoop Vicente Luque. But I'm sure it's affecting him somehow. Like, this has to affect you. Any person would be affected by this. If this happened to me, I'd be affected by this. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to act like, oh, this wouldn't affect me, man. I'm strong. Like, no, bro, that would affect anybody. Really. It would really get to anybody. And I just think this whole approach of like, oh, I'm going to sue you for defamation against another fighter in Sean Strickland. Like, dude, just shut up. Just don't respond to it. You know what I'm saying? Don't respond to it. Let people have the opinions. And like I said, there's just too many things now where, yeah, you could dispute the book. You could like dismantle this argument. But the fact is that altogether it's just weird. And they haven't addressed the fact that the ex-husband lives with them and is the nutritionist, which is very strange. And it's also very strange that she's 40 years old and he's 26 years old. In my opinion, that's very strange, especially from woman to man, in my opinion. I'm not married, so, I still think it's pretty weird because he's very young. He might be a little bit immature. She's 40 years old. And the fact that she manages his career, like, she seems like the guy in the house. She seems like the man of the household. And that's just strange to me. But that's not it. Like I said, those things individually, they might be weird for us, the MMA community. But it's not big enough to cause this whole chaos and fiasco that's occurred. Because some of these details we already knew prior to last week. Like, we knew that Ian Garry was a weirdo. We knew he was a vegan. We knew he took his wife's last name. So we already kind of knew these things. But then when the whole book situation came out, and then his conversation with his wife on that post he made on Instagram, and the documentary, and the WAG and Red Pill MMA, then it really started to blow up and get a lot of attention. So that's really my take on all this. Like, I know maybe you guys were expecting me to trash Ian Garry and all this. I just kind of wanted to do like a little recap and just kind of give my opinion. And yeah, man, this story is so messy. It's really bad for them. And, Maybe she is a wag. Who knows? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not gonna put too much stock into the book. Like I said, I haven't listened to the book, so I don't know what's necessarily in the book. So, she might not be lying about the fact that it was just a joke. But still, like, even if the book is a joke and it was 10 years ago, it doesn't change the fact that there's still a lot of weird things about this story that just makes you scratch your head and be like, she might be a gold digger, she might, you know what I'm saying? So that's my take on all that, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.